the one other thing is that's probably on everyone's mind is the NFTs. So I think we'll bring up JWW to just give us a little bit of background on how the NFT drop went and if there's any news on the NFTs, and then we can move towards both the budget and kind of, I will open it up to anything else that's on people's mind as far as like DAO organization structure and that sort of thing. But the purpose of this meeting again is to have an open format where people can really share their ideas and really anything goes. So once we get through the NFT section, then we'll kind of open it up for everything. And we'll do, raise your hand. I'll kind of call you out in a little bit of order and we can discuss them, but we'll try to keep it orderly, but I'll try to get everyone up here. And if you don't feel like you want to speak up, you can put it maybe in the, do we have a chat for this? Just put it in the Barnyard chat and I'll read those and I can express those ideas too. So JWW, do you want to come on up?
Yeah, hey Dumpling. So we launched the winter collection for the NFTs yesterday at the start of season 3300. So if you guys haven't had a chance to read through the Medium document, I'll give you a really quick overview of what it entails. But we're going to be putting out 2,000 winter bean NFTs. Those are obviously already underway. And you can qualify for them by doing a basically a $50 50 bean investment into the protocol or more, either through Silo LP, Silo Beans, or sowing. And then within the season, whatever the top 5 transactions are, you'll be getting one of 5 NFTs. And there are a couple weighting factors that go into it to help kind of increase the significance of getting like rare elements of the NFTs. So for example, how early you invest in the season, meaning like if you invest in the first five minutes of a season versus the last 5 minutes, the earlier in the season, there's higher rarity. If you actually hold a Genesis NFT already, it increases your rarity. And so there's a couple of other things that we're looking at that are already incorporated that basically help enhance the chances that you get rare components of it. As I think everyone can tell, the release went really well. There was a little hiccup on the rare beans, the hyper rare bean side, which we smoothed out pretty quickly. But we're also doing a select hyper rare set of beans for the first 2, which have already gone, were for the first $50,000 deposit and the first 50K deposit, and then the first 50K. So those were actually claimed within 15 minutes, which was fantastic. Then after that, it was the next was 100K sow. So everything thereafter is for sowing specifically to keep to really encourage people to stay in the protocol with their capital. And I think that was actually claimed already as well. I was looking through the Ethers scan last night, but I might be wrong. But we can look in the top transactions, we'll find out. So then there would be 2 remaining hyper rares left, which is crazy because it's barely been a day. One for 150K sowing into the field and the other for 200K going into the field. So the first day went really well. I think we're all seeing that the investment size is quite big. In a couple hundreds, that might be going down in the future, might not. But either way, I think it's just great to see the excitement that we're seeing come into it. The question that I think people are asking is when they're going to start seeing the NFTs populating. We're still finalizing just some final last things, but those should be populating in. I think we have it listed in the Medium article, so you can refer to that for the season that we're looking to start showcasing those. So that's kind of a quick update on where we're at. And then we have another longer term Medium article that we have in draft, and we're going to be pushing out to the community in the near term that spells out the Bean DAO that we've been talking about and the mechanics of that and the governance structure. And I feel pretty confident that Genesis holders, when they see this, are going to feel more comfortable with their investments, but also at the same time, continue to encourage everyone to get into the winter bean NFT space. But it's a pretty quick overview.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that's it's a tough balance to strike. I think you've, from what I've heard, I think you've done a really good job. Of course, I don't know. I'm waiting to hear the news too. So yeah, great. Thanks for that. And I think we can, unless there's any other items that aren't related to the budget, we can kind of move on to discussion of the Q1 budget. Did everyone have a chance to read the document? And I imagine some folks have some ideas, some suggestions, and we're open to to any kind of guidance on that.
Hey, so I read the Q1 budget and it's all good stuff. I was wondering though, so it's like kind of like a high level overview. And I was wondering kind of where you guys are on the details and kind of like where the discussion is going on, if anything. Is it more like in private messages? Is it as a specific channel? Is it in Notion? Just kind of like, yeah, shining some light on like, so what's next, or what are the next steps being taken? Because I thought the Q1 budget proposal, or just the initial stuff, was great, but I thought it was kind of lacking in a little bit of detail.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a fair thing to point out. Some of the discussions, have been happening, in kind of in DMs and that sort of thing, but not that much. I think that what we really need to do is pick something that someone brought up. I think, not to call, I think it was Eriel when I was chatting with him, but he was saying that maybe if it's split between too many different places, then it's not really happening anywhere, or it's less transparent than it could be otherwise. So I think we should try to keep the discussion to it. We should really decide maybe here and now where we're going to do it. But there's a Commonwealth, that we could do it over in Commonwealth. We could do it right here in the Discord, or we could do it in the Notion. So there's kind of pros and cons to all of those. But I think that just for the most transparency, and so that everyone can easily have access to it, I think likely doing it in the Discord is the best idea. But I'm open to people's ideas on where it's best to do those discussions, and also, just maybe doing another document with more details, in the next couple of days, would be something that we could do. I know there's been discussion of who's going to be, on the multi-sig. So that could be something that, we kind of propose and float to the community and see what people think. As far as that, there's different ideas of, we obviously want people who are, something that's important is availability, someone being nearby to a computer within 24 hours, so that when some people, if you're going to go on a lot of backpacking trips or that sort of thing, you want someone to be who's available in case we need to access things fairly quickly, someone who's also fairly trusted within the community, and those are kind of the base qualifications, so that's something we can certainly talk about. As far as other details of the proposal, as it gets fleshed out more, we can post more details. We can also have more constructive conversations, in public as far as the details of the proposal. So that I take your point, and I think we just need to get the discussion going a little bit more, as opposed to just kind of waiting for the discussion to happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So more engagement, I think, is what we're really after. So let's start that conversation more in earnest. It really hasn't started yet. This is part of that, but
let me propose possibly a Discord channel for it, or a thread. I feel like this is the discussion is going to have to be more fluid than what Notion or Commonwealth would allow. And as we formalize those ideas, then we can move it up to those channels.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's, in community, I know that we had, where the budget dropped, like the budget document, but maybe that should, maybe we should just make a separate one for now in community that is budget. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so, obviously I have certain biases here. But I would say, I think like even someone already called out that, we have a lot of Discord channels. And I think especially as we sort of continue to grow the operation and we have like important discussions like this, we don't necessarily want to be making an entirely new channel for every new discussion. So, that's sort of one thought I have there. And then I think if you start to overlap important conversations in the same channel, you then make it pretty hard to track those conversations looking backwards. So I do think that, I mean, again, bias, something like Commonwealth works well in terms of tracking those conversations over a longer period of time, and ensuring that there's a lot of transparency into those conversations. Whether, it's that or, Notion, I think, can be open for discussion. But yeah, I think, like, especially, it's already so hard to keep track of all of the different channels. I don't know if making an entirely new channel makes sense.
Yeah, actually, on that note, Dumpling, is there a reason why we would deviate just away from the Q1 budget? I mean, I think since we're already here, maybe we can just make an announcement in the general chat that, the Q1 budget's out, it's live, and we just kind of keep the conversation going there. Because even as I look at it, I mean, it's one of the pretty sparse channels that we have. So maybe we could even just use the pre-existing one.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason we can't just have it in that. I think people were just maybe a little intimidated, to be honest. It was kind of like a few things were said, but it just seemed like the barrier for posting seemed kind of high. So maybe we should just, the more people that post, the less it'll feel like that. I'm guessing that's what happened, but it just seemed like we didn't get enough feedback there, and people might have felt like it was the wrong place, or they didn't, whatever. But I think we just need more people, just more engagement there.
Yeah, I think if we just, a handful of us just chime into the general and say, provide your thoughts, look through the document, it'll push it pretty quickly. I mean, I think the community can be pretty responsive. So maybe that's a good balance between all of us. I mean, I know George, Commonwealth might seem better, but I just think that given the bulk of the traffic right now is on Discord, it still might just be the best avenue.
Yeah, and I guess we will not really be able to kill that channel, the Q1 budget. Maybe we should just change it to, well, we don't want to take that. I see what George is saying about backwards compatibility. We want to be able to look at this discussion potentially, a year from now. It may be important for some reason. So we should probably find a way to if we're going to use the Discord to download it or back it up somehow, or not delete that channel, I guess.
I guess
that's kind of the meta conversation. I kind of want to also dig into the actual. I don't want to spend the whole time talking about how we're going to do this discussion when we're all here and we can have probably a higher quality discussion right now, if that makes sense.
So I guess to kind of interweave all of the ideas together, we could just use the Q1 channel. Don't need to create a new Discord channel, but then also use either, I guess Commonwealth would probably go better with the with Discord, because it's a website front end, and then you can link important things that were being said in the Commonwealth into Discord. Compared to Notion, you can't really link anything together. So I guess my vote would be more for Commonwealth. And then I guess to get the budget discussion going forward, okay, there's a initial budget proposal. Now what? How do we divvy the money up? How do we assign people to roles? How do we, I guess what do we do next? What's the next step even to get this thing going? There's just so much that needs to be done. So many things that need to be answered still.
So this might be a good place for us to just hop in for a second. And there's still a lot of ambiguity around a lot of the process. And so, as Dumpling mentioned, one of the things that we need to start figuring out is which community members, in addition to Publius, will serve on as signatures or key holders for the multi-sig wallet. And beyond that, I think, and a lot of you here have, in many ways self-selected and, are already in unique roles within the DAO. And I'm just looking at kind of a head count. It applies to at least 50% of the people here already sort of have either explicitly defined or roughly defined roles within the DAO. And so over the next month, let's call it, as the notion and the infrastructure all starts to come into scope, hopefully there will similarly be an increase in structure in the DAO. And So maybe just like, and it'd be great if, and this is like, since most people are here, it might even be good for people to just pop up and do like a 10-second or 30-second, like what you're working on in the DAO at the moment. And that might be the best way to do. I'm not sure if that would be helpful for people to sort of get a sense of the roles that everyone is starting to take. And that might be a good way for people within the DAO to get to know one another, but not sure if that's the appropriate thing to do right now. That's sort of up to you guys how you'd like to spend this time. But in general, I think it's going to continue to be mostly that people self-select and step up into the roles that need to be filled, as opposed to, people being put into the roles by some sort of arbitrary process. So obviously there's a little bit of friction there when it comes to allocations and funding. And so in short, yeah, Evan, this is a little bit uncertain. And I think the way that we're thinking about it more substantively is Beanstalk Farms is going to hopefully pay like salaried people that are working full-time or part-time sort of across the larger stack. And that process for what roles need to get filled and how much to pay for those roles is not explicitly defined at the moment. One thing we're working on is putting up a job board with more detailed descriptions of the roles that need to be filled. And similarly in Notion, a task board, like a master task board. But it's difficult to do because we're trying to have lots of conversations with people to help everyone figure out what is the best place for them to get involved and contribute, and what's a reasonable amount for people to get compensated for that contribution. But ultimately, the hope is to more and more be removed from that process. And so, for example, as a couple examples of people that have really stepped up on that regard is like an example is Dumpling, right? Who is obviously, according to the snapshot proposal, the operations lead of Beanstalk Farms. And since that snapshot was approved, Dumpling has been just absolutely amazing at getting Beanstalk Farms set up and making sure to touch base with everyone that wants to get involved. And so he has, self-selected himself, and we're so thrilled that he has, and impressed in the way that he's done it, self-selected himself into more of a coordinator role to help fill some of those positions. And we think he's doing an amazing job in that role. So without explicitly defining who's doing what from the top, I think the process that we want to encourage through Beanstalk Farms and Beansprout structure is one that allows in a modular way for people to contribute in exactly the way that they want to contribute and be fairly compensated for it based on their work and their contribution to Beanstalk.
So just on the heels of that, kind of to answer your question, Evan, too, is like most of you have had a conversation with me, where a lot of that conversation, to echo what Publius was saying, was like, okay, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? And what does the DAO need? And so you guys are all kind of in the enviable position of kind of getting to pick where, you want to focus on to a large extent. There's always going to be a few unfun things that, have to get done. But in general, focusing on what you're, what you're really good at and what you want to do. So that will be on the Beanstalk Farms end of things where, if you are, if it's a recurring role that's already, that isn't like a super easy to define type of project that we could do through Beansprout, you're probably going to be paid through Beanstalk Farms. Because of this, we kind of played with the different numbers of what, of what should, how the budget should be allocated. And currently we're thinking 1.2 million for Beanstalk Farms and 800,000 for Beanstalk Sprout. Now those numbers could change, but once they're funded,
Beansprout.
Oh yeah, sorry, I don't know what I said. Beansprout. But those, those could change. But once they're once we vote for it, then it's pretty well locked in for the quarter. So, that's something that we can discuss. But as far as the overall, like, Evan, what else do you feel like needs to be? I mean, it will be a much longer document once it's all finished, but are there any things that jump out to you that you really want clarity on? That should be brought up, right? Right away that we can discuss.
So I think for me at least, and it might be different for other people, but if we work from a top-down approach, so we got 1.2 mil and 800K divided, how do we further divide them and kind of just go from there? So like my thoughts would be, what are the main, I guess, like categories of roles? How, like Dumpling, you're probably like the center of the operations right now, where you've talked to everybody and you have the best idea of who's in what role. And so how would you categorize maybe, all of the different people into these very broad roles? Let's say like you pick like 5 or 6, let's say 6 different like types of roles, I guess. And then from there on, you can split the budget accordingly into each of those. Then you can, split it into full-time versus part-time, and then just recursively divide and conquer from there.
Yeah. So we've already started that. That's, if you go to the Notion, you can find where there's a basically everyone who is, what they're getting paid for this last, quarter, or what they're currently getting paid, extrapolated forward for the next quarter. How many beans we'll need for that, and then the question is, how many additional roles will there be, and how much will we grow into that, especially on the development end. So that's a working document right now, but we are doing that to come up with the allocations, and that's kind of how we backed into the 1.2 number. Then
where in the Notion is that?
So if you go to the org chart, and then if you go within the org chart, you can go to so that's kind of along the ideas of what we're thinking, and then you can poke around in there and at the Beanstalk Farms DAO positions.
Yep.
That's kind of where we're. So that's kind of the where we're operating from. But then furthermore, I think another important thing to discuss is in terms of where we need to have more more clarity before a vote comes. But that's certainly something we can get to. And then also, as far as decision making within the Beanstalk Farm side of things, I think there's more that we can flesh out there too. Do people have any other feelings? Like,
we would comment on this though. We would comment. The main thing that we want to focus on when it comes to process is transparency. So whether it's a role for Beanstalk Farms, the hope is that the role is clearly defined, or whether it's a project for Bean Sprout, the hope is that there's clear deliverables and clearly defined goals and an objective. And beyond that, the hope is to fund lots of shit. Like, we want Beanstalk Farms to be able to grow aggressively. And anyone that wants to fill in a continuous basis, we want to find a role for them, because long-term contributors to Beanstalk, even if they're part-time, that's better than people who will do a full-time month and then disappear. And so the hope is to encourage lots of people that want to focus on one specific aspect of Beanstalk to have the opportunity to apply. And I mean, unless there's a problem or they're not qualified, the hope is to put people into roles that will, help them grow and succeed and also benefit Beanstalk. But in general, we're focused a lot less, especially at this stage of the game where we're trying to grow incredibly aggressively, at who's making the ultimate decision to hire. Everyone can hire. Like it's not about everyone has the ability to allocate funds, but if you want to work on Beanstalk, the idea that you're not going to have a role, it's pretty unrealistic at this point in time. So if anything, the thing that we're more focused on is making sure that there's flexibility on both Beanstalk Farms and Bean Sprout to allow for sort of whatever needs to happen over the next 3 months. And like one of the big limitations in the Q4 budget was that it was way too explicitly defined across the board. And that caused a lot of friction. Like, should this be in marketing or should this be in development? Well, it's kind of both. Like, there's a lot of friction there. So the hope is that this is a little bit less explicit and a little bit more open-ended, keeping in mind sort of the difficulties we've experienced in Q4 managing the current budget. So it's not like, if anything, the goal is to have really clearly defined stuff in the Notion so that anyone can like apply, without having to even speak to anyone per se. And so this is a process that's very important to iron out, but candidly will not be ironed out in the next 48 hours or 72 hours before the BIP goes live. Like that's pretty unrealistic. I think that the stuff that's more realistic and more meaningful for us to try to have a discussion on is like the custody of the funds and whether it should be custodied by one wallet or two wallets, and in general, how many signatures we want on the wallets, and talking about how many community members we want to be signatories on the wallets. Like, these are, in our opinion, slightly more pressing questions than, who gets to decide who to hire people for Beanstalk Farms, because the hope is it's going to be lots, like basically there won't be any bureaucracy when it comes to that. That's
okay.
And I'll
that's
also
some
jump
of our
in
thoughts.
with most of the people that I've talked to have been, community led, like people who just kind of jumped in to the community or have been here for a while and kind of want to step up. And we found roles for like 95% of them. So basically, if I echo that with Publius, if you want to work for Beanstalk, yeah, just let's find a place for you and let's find something that makes sense. So I can't promise that it will always be exactly what you want to do. I could get into details of, like, there was one guy who was really good at video stuff, but he didn't feel like he really wanted to do video stuff. And then the things that he wanted to do, he didn't really have experience for. And that was like one of the only cases where I was like, well, we'll have to wait until something jumps up that both attracts you and is useful for Beanstalk. But in most cases, we're finding a place for everyone. So so I think that for Q1, that probably won't be as big of an issue. But to talk about the multi-sig, do people have an idea, two different multi-sigs, one, or, for 5 or 7 signers? That's kind of what we're, Publius, should we say, I think you have, I hate to put this on you, but can I say, what the thinking is right now, or we've only had a couple of conversations about this, but.
So some of our preliminary thoughts are, you feel free to present them as well, Dumpling. Not sure if you wanted to present them or you wanted us to present them.
I'm happy to present them, but I just wanted to, to kind of make sure that was okay. But so we're thinking two multi-sigs would make sense for Beansprout and for Beanstalk Farms, two different ones, but with only a little bit of overlap as far as the and who the signers are. So the same people couldn't be, if everyone, basically allowing for it to overrule, the same people on the same side couldn't make both choices, essentially. We were thinking 7 would probably make sense. And if it was 7, then 3 of those.
So just to clarify, not to cut you off, Dumpling, but I think the thing to clarify that Dumpling was saying is the hope with a multi-sig is that there's enough overlap where there's communication between Beanstalk Farms and Beansprout, and like there's not totally like discoordination between what's being funded. But at the same time, we don't want like one set of community members to be holding the keys for both wallets because of, the lack of, like, there's just, apples to apples. It's preferred to have a more decentralized set of key holders. right?
I would also point out that this is a significant step in decentralization from having Publius have control of everything. So this is, I think, still having Publius on the multi-sig makes sense, but not in a controlling stake. So not in a that wouldn't make a lot of sense. But so we were thinking Publius. This we were just talking about this, but 3 keys for Publius and then 4 keys for community members. And they're not being overlapped between the community members on the multi-sig for Beansprout and for Beanstalk Farms. And you can give a little more details on it, Publius, but I just wanted to kind of throw that out there as a beginning point, and then we can discuss it and the pros and cons, as a community.
Yeah. So to highlight, I think that the sort of open questions are whether there should be 5 signatures, or 7 for each wallet. And then the secondary question is how many keys should Publius have versus should community members have? And we don't want to have a majority of the keys going forward. And so if there's 5 keys, we wouldn't want more than 2. And if there's 7, we wouldn't want more than 3. So the only other maybe thing to add is in terms of process, we were thinking that in the spirit of sort of self-selection, we're going to try to put out like a very short form that people can sort of fill out to describe, their experience with Beanstalk, their experience of custody and crypto funds, as Dumpling said, their availability, and sort of then from there, the hope is that, there will be some sort of community discussion and process from there, and remains to be seen whether, there will be some sort of vote or, in general, this is where it's difficult, right? Because on the one hand, we want to make sure that Beanstalk is in good hands, especially as we start to relinquish control in various capacities. But we also don't want to be the ones to say who is in control. And this is where the friction comes in, and we think that allowing people to sort of self-nominate is probably the best way to do this process in a decentralized way. And then the hope is through some sort of, we might have some follow-up questions for people or something like that. We can maybe narrow it down or we'll see. But the hope is that this process will sort of play out over the next 48 hours, let's say, so that we can try to get an actual BIP live shortly after Christmas, so that it will be approved in the very beginning of January. And enough said. I think we've been rambling for a bit.
So no, I think that's all good stuff, and that's certainly more than we discussed. But I think I like the sound of self-selection, basically people filling out a little form to say, hey, I'd like to be in charge of this. B, I think I'm qualified to do so. Then we could potentially narrow it down by a little bit after kind of a vetting process, but then presenting it for a vote. Maybe could we do a snapshot vote? Would that sound good?
I think that, as opposed to a snapshot vote and using a form, that still sounds a little on the centralized side. That it might be better to use Commonwealth, because you can basically create some guidelines. What do we want to put into a self-nomination, and then make a post, say which multi-sig you want to be a part of, write about yourself. I believe each post can even get likes as well, and so then you can also see who has the most likes at the end of 48 hours, in terms of who is, I guess, the most popular or who makes the most kind of sense. That's all on the record. You can post general comments for follow-up questions, clarifications. But yeah, I think Commonwealth might be a better outlet than using whatever the forums process was.
Sure. Yeah. Anyone else jump in on that? And the overall, overall thoughts on that?
Yeah, I guess I just had a question back to, I think what I saw in the proposal, Dumpling, was that these multi-sig decisions are for anything that's above a 10,000 spend. Is that right?
No, I think this would just be the multi-sig that's in control of the funds,
I
not
see.
the nitty gritty of like of spends.
Yeah, so to add on to that, the process will look a little bit like, let's say there's a new role carved out for somebody in Beanstalk Farms. According to the proposal, within 1 week from them coming on, there needs to be a formally proposed snapshot. And whereas currently there's sort of the assumption that the answer is no, and we have to wait until there's a quorum voting yes. The thought is to switch that to an optimistic approval where now there needs to be a quorum against. So there will be a lot of flexibility in terms of the initial speaking for the funds, and then the community will have an opportunity to veto it basically shortly thereafter. But the multi-sig keys are just a question of who is custodying those funds and where do those beans lie, and then how are those beans actually spent for payment.
So I personally really like the idea of the optimistic approval because it seems like it allows us to move a little faster and it also allows us to spend less gas. But I'm just curious what other people think about that too, since that's kind of a big change.
And sorry, Dumpling, just to make sure I understood, then that would be basically like we give it approval and then it has to get a certain amount of no's before it's rejected. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Well, it's sort of like it's approved, like auto approval, unless there's enough votes to kind of veto it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that might be great to do starting out, and then I guess would it be if it just starts to grow out of control? I assume we could just work through some other proposal or something like that to change it later on, right?
Yeah, if we wanted a big change to the Q1 budget, Publius, would that operate through a BIP?
There
Or
would
how
have to be a
operate?
BIP. It would have to be a BIP. Anything that is, even though like a lot of the uses of the funds for the budget are written in words as opposed to explicitly defined in the smart contracts themselves. The language in the BIP is substantive, and we would want to stick to that. We've tried our best to do that with the Q4 budget, even though it's been a pain in the ass. And so, the fact that there would be an on-chain approval of these funds and what their use is and the procedures around them, there would certainly have to be a BIP to amend that. Or at least a snapshot proposal that would, have to receive a majority vote, for example.
Gotcha. Yeah. So to your point then, JW, it would have to if we were going to change the optimistic approval, or if it started to get out of hand or anything, we'd have to do the BIP.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess the only thing behind that is given the community is still quite small, once we start to, I mean, actually, I think you pointed this out the other day, Dumpling. We've been growing pretty quickly, but as that continues to grow and grow, and we get new members who are excited to join, just don't know how that could impact if we've just got a lot of proposals that come in. I think the optimistic approach is great and really does help us get stuff going ASAP. Just good to know that we could, later on potentially review that and change it if we had to.
Yeah, that's a totally fair criticism. Oh, we got Josie. Let's bring you up. Show requests. Here you go. Josie, you should be able to come up now. The invite was sent. Shoot, Josie. I don't know how else to. You've been invited to come up, so. Josie, does it say just come up on stage? Because you may be able to come up on stage. This isn't working great, guys, to get people up on stage. I'm wondering what the problem is.
Maybe the hand raise was a miss.
Got someone up. Oh, Farmer Dan? Farmer
Yeah,
Dan, you
so
managed to get, how did you get up on stage?
yeah, I just pressed the it was like the far left button. It said become a speaker. So
Okay, so
I just clicked that. So just trying to
Josie, are
see if
you
it
able to
worked.
press that button, become a speaker button? There was another person, Mike Jones, also wanted to come up. See if you can just become a speaker. Okay, Dave, you're up. How'd you get up?
I just pushed the become a speaker button.
Okay, Mike or Josie, can you do that? Well, maybe you want to type out your in the Barnyard chat and I can read it. It's a good backup.
I don't think Josie's in the audience anymore.
We scared him away.
I guess so. But Mike Jones, we still want you to hear from you. Or J-Man, you got some ideas?
Oh no, I was just commenting on that.
Very good. Town hall if people can't speak. Sorry about that. Can't figure it out. Okay, Mike, you're requesting. Show requests. It says invite sent on the request to speak. I don't know why. Oh, there you go. How'd you do it, Mike? Just so everyone else knows how to get up. You're currently muted.
Together we will revolutionize decentralized finance, guys.
Mike, you unmuted briefly.
I'm not trying to speak.
Oh, you weren't trying to speak at all the whole time?
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, okay. I was so excited. All right. Who else?
Well, Dumpling, I think maybe just like in terms of the best next steps, like it seems like, again, reviewing the proposal is going to be really helpful for everyone. And then would it be best to start having like the specific conversations about these within the Commonwealth then, or within the Discord channel? I'm sure that maybe it's just that people are a little more timid, and plus it's obviously, given the holidays, obviously harder to get attendance. But I have a feeling like if we start soliciting or just asking for comments from the community, we probably could pretty quickly. So I
mean, candidly, we don't want comments from people that don't have comments. Like, we're not in the business of looking for people to opine, to give us more opinions for shit they don't care about. So we take seriously the people that are here, and like that's the statement in of itself. So everyone in general in the community has an opportunity to comment, but I don't think that it behooves anyone other than we're happy to bump a Q1 budget one more time and just say, hey, add everyone, like take a look at the budget one more time if you have any comments. But if people don't have comments, there's like meaningless comments aren't helpful here.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly true. I don't think we want to and we want to move, we want to move pretty fast here, so we want to probably keep it targeted to the things that we need in the next 48 hours to decide on. So a lot of that would be getting this, figuring out who's going to be on the multi-sig, and any other kind of last minute changes. But it's true that we don't have 6 months to figure out this budget. So we want to keep this targeted. But that said, that's what the purpose of this meeting. So if anyone has anything, don't feel too shy. But to J-Dub's comment, we can do it, over in the chat, in the next, this evening, tomorrow. But we got to get moving. So, Evan?
How about, I guess, an action item for ending this, as we're coming to the end would be, so priority is to figure out who's going to be on the multi-sig. I know you guys want, 5 to 7. 7's obviously better. The more the merrier. However, I'm not really convinced that, there's there's 28 people here, 6 are speaking, 22 are listening. I'm not convinced. I'm not sure we're gonna have it's it's not like where we have 100 people and there's gonna be a bunch of people to select from for the multi-sig. I feel like it's gonna be more like, yeah. So I'm questioning: will there be enough people who want to take the responsibility of the multi-sig and want to self-select to even get the 5 to 7 number? And I think a good way to look at that would be to just say, post in the Q1 budget. Let's just get this rolling with people self-nominate. I would suggest Commonwealth, just to write a bio, what you would be good at, or what the purpose is. We can hammer out the details of what the nomination post should have, but to just have that and then post a message about that, this is it's open. If you want to self nominate, go ahead, make your case, and then just have that start going, today or tomorrow or just soon. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. I think that if we don't get people, then we'll have to just sort of solicit people from, from probably the most involved people. Working our way down is probably our approach. But yeah,
because the worst case scenario, or the opposite case scenario, I don't know. It's not necessarily the worst, but what if there are not 10 people to? Well, I guess Publius would take 4. So what if there are not enough people to fill 2 multi-sigs? Then we'll just be left with 1 multi-sig anyways, which I don't think is the worst thing in the world considering where we're at. But yeah, I think that's also a possibility to consider at the end of the day.
if we don't get enough, we can go down to 5 multi-sig with Publius controlling 2 of them, so they still don't have a majority. And then we would need 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We need 6 more. So that would be another option. But yeah, I agree with you. We're not going to be having a huge amount of people probably who want to take on this responsibility and kind of the burden of it, to be honest. So yeah, it's probably a good point.
So Dumpling, then just to make sure that this makes sense in terms of timelines, it's the idea kind of within 24 to 48 hours work through the multi-sig, and then Publius, maybe your thoughts on this too, but the idea is to get the Q1 budget proposed, or not proposed, but finalized by Monday, Tuesday of next week. Is it the thinking, or?
So today's Thursday. Christmas Eve is tomorrow, and then Christmas is Saturday. So we would say basically, by Monday at the latest, which is the 27th, we would want to get almost all this finalized. And then if the BIP goes out later than Tuesday, that's probably too bad. So that would be not ideal. So, even though it's Christmas over the next 48 hours, it would be great if people just take 5 minutes and sort of drop their application if they're interested, and if not, there's no other work required. So in Barnyard chat, we just dropped a rough draft of the form. I'm curious for people's thoughts, if there's anything that should be added here, or if this is we think this is concise and gives people just a short form to explain what they want to do.
Maybe instead of the how much time do you spend away from your computer, also I guess how much, well, never mind. I answered my own question.
Thanks, Evan.
Yeah, that's that form.
Is that about it?
It's short. It takes maybe 15 minutes tops to fill out. It takes other people, less than 5 minutes to read it. It's not extremely difficult to look through, give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and then it's just a matter of getting the awareness out there, which can be done through the Q1 budget. Maybe even put an announcement and at everyone if we really need to. But yeah, it looks good.
Cool. Yeah, well, maybe the best format for this discussion is, is in the Q1 budget tab, and then so. Sorry, go ahead, Publius. But
No, I think we were going to say, we'll especially as we only have a few minutes left here, we'll drop the official form in the next hour or two in the Q1 budget chat, and hopefully within 24 hours, basically anyone that wants to apply will have applied, and then we intend to sort of speak to anyone that applies, and then we'll kind of go from there. And based on our conversations with people, then there may be sort of a final pool, and there may be a vote, or maybe, as Evan said, we don't get so many applicants, and then there's no narrowing down process. So it will be a little bit up in the air on how sort of the final selection is made, as a function of how many people apply and the pool of applicants in general. So this is how things have to be done as we're working to make Beanstalk Farms totally unreliant on Publius. But obviously, at the same time, it's important that transition is led by people that are, highly competent and aligned with Beanstalk. So it's hopefully we get, between community input and our conversations with anyone that applies, there's the right balance of ensuring that we're comfortable with the people that are selected, and their sort of commitment to Beanstalk thus far, and what they've demonstrated, and then what the community wants as well. So that's sort of where our thoughts are.
Okay, great. Wendy, did you have something to say?
I was just going to say, with regards to being a multi-sig, I'm sure there's a lot of people that have no idea what that entails, and what you would have to do if you were one, and I think there's a lot of people here that are new, so that it'd be good to have some sort of explanation.
Candidly, those people might not be the best suited to manage private keys at the moment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think Wendy's point is probably more that we should try to weed people out like that. There should be a question, maybe. I guess what's your experience with? We get back to the questions, but it seems like I feel like that's kind of implied. But yeah, maybe we should be a little more specific in the form.
Yeah, that's a great point. We will add one.
Okay, well, I think that's probably. I think to JW's point, the better place to do this is probably if you do have specific budget concerns or thoughts, just put them in the Q1 budget section, and we can kind of go that way. But I think this was good to hammer out and to get the discussion open about the multi-sig, and to really kind of a call to action. We do need people to do it, and it'd be better to have more people to pick from rather than less. So please, if you're willing to do it, fill out one of those forms, and you'll likely be on it. So yeah, but no reason we need to kill the next 6 minutes for all y'all. But Publius, do you have anything else to say?
Not at the moment. Just want to say thank you guys for coming out on the night before Christmas Eve, and this is a holiday week, but Beanstalk keeps on chugging, and we've been crossing the peg plenty today. So a fun day, and we hope everyone has a Merry Christmas.
Okay, thanks everybody. Merry Christmas.